One Punch Man Season 3 Episode 10 is one of the worst One Punch Man episodes I've ever seen. This thing is so cooked, it's actually unbelievable. Where do I even start? A lot of things that I hated, only a few things that I liked. Like just maybe one or two things. When it comes to the first part of the episode, they adapted it panel by panel. Zombie Man versus Vampire, everything was there. They even added an only anime exclusive scene, which is Zombie Man fighting on close quarter with his gun against pure blood. That doesn't happen in the manga. They did remove the part where Zombie Man is directed towards pure blood by some monsters that were standing outside of the door. They didn't have that. Zombie Man in the anime just found it by himself. But I guess the huge problem that I have with this and the whole season obviously is the animation. The animation 90% of the times in the episode is actually stiff, it's bad, it's not that good. Even with Zombie Man versus Vampire. They didn't prioritize that one for some reason. It's an actual good fight in the manga. People love it, but it looked stiff most of the times. There's no impact. You don't feel the power behind each attack. It just looks completely weird and jarring and junky, you know. The best parts of the entire fight is, as I said, the anime only exclusive moment where Zombie Man is trying to hit Pure Blood in the head with the weapon. And then after, when he dishes out his two swords and starts to tangle with Pure Blood, it actually looks good. The animation is not that great and it's not that bad. It's average at best, you know. Camera movements not motionless, and you can tell that after this 10 seconds or 15 seconds exchange where like the animation picked up a little bit, it goes back after to being completely jarring and stiff. Now this episode's censorship is actually insane. It's 4Kids 1P Sanji lollipop level of censorship, where they changed it from him smoking to having a lollipop. I'm the kind of person who does understand why censorship is necessary, but this is weird. One Punch Man is not a shonen, it's a seinen. It's made for adults. And this is the same episode where you have a character losing limbs and arms and parts of his brains, but smoking is kinda bad. Smoking is like, ooh, like we gotta hide it. I don't understand, to be honest. But again, it is what it is. Maybe it's rules and regulations, same as the ghosting and dimming stuff that we absolutely hate. I'd like to have the stuff gone, but we gotta put up with it nonetheless, even though this kinda kills the vibes of the character. This is obviously without accounting for all the disco filter stuff that we keep talking about episode by episode. I feel like it's getting repetitive. It is what it is. We've been dealt a shit hand and we just gotta accept it. But then there is this one disco scene that we're gonna be talking about later in this video that we simply cannot ignore. Now, once again, the anime has chosen to adapt the non-canon version of these particular events, as they removed a lot of things that really do mess with the story significantly. The Zombie Man fight isn't changed at all. It's technically the same thing or something close. I'm more so talking about the Atomic Samurai's disciples, Sweet Mask, and Narinki's private squad scenes. And this isn't simply a mistake or a case of the studio being misinformed or confused. They actually know what they're doing. The pre-retconned non-canonical version just happens to be the less problematic to adapt. When Narinki's squad and Do-Ass encounters the samurais, the fight lasts for 8 pages before Amai Mask interferes in the very first version. Unlike the canon one that lasts for 16 pages and has a lot of choreography. Not only that, but the Narinki squad are supposed to be present in the next chapters, having major spotlights by the way. Because they survived, these mercenaries continue to be part of the story. They help the samurai fight swarms of monsters and even return for a future arc, which allows them to get their own moments of development. The simple reason they wouldn't show up anymore narratively is because since they adapted the non-canon version, Amai Mask, although it didn't appear well, maybe due to censorship, actually disposed of them and maybe even killed them. Unlike the canon one, where before he kills them, Ion actually saves them. That's why canonically they're still a part of the story and they do appear in a future arc. But since they're possibly dead now, the studio wouldn't bother to cover or adapt a lot of scenes, making them easily able to reach the Orochi vs Saitama fight by the end of the season. Now, this story-wise creates a lot of problems, as there are reasons why they retconned the chapters in the first place. If Sweet Mask kills these mercenaries that aren't really monsters, a certain arc in the future would just kinda doesn't make sense. Not to mention that we're supposed to get a lot of cool encounters, conversations, comedic scenes, and character development from these guys. Now, there are obviously other changes, like say Do-S is supposed to attack Amai Mask in the face, exposing his true nature, only to crush her head after. Ayan is left deeply suspicious of Sweet Mask after sensing his murderous intent, planting seeds for future events. In contrast to the anime version where he's not even present in the first place. It's just a lot of things that messes with the narrative completely. These in fact aren't just small changes, they're fundamental alterations that weaken the story's fabric. So if you want to see how much was lost, I strongly recommend reading the canonical version in the manga chapters 101 to 105. Otherwise, you're essentially watching a streamlined, non-canonical adaptation that sacrifices long-term storytelling for short-term pacing. It just hurts the story completely. This actually goes back to One's comment about season 3 before it aired, where he said that the storyline is unique to the anime, actually hinting that we would practically be watching a non-canon anime. Now, this is the part where we talk about the devil long hair versus Atomic Samurai's disciple scene, and can you please explain why did they do this other than memeing about what fans have been complaining about the entire time? They literally have devil long hair in a disco stage with colors changing from one to another. It's literally the entire meme of season 3. I actually went back to check in the manga if this is maybe in his mind, maybe he's imagining himself in a stage where people are watching him, but no, it's an anime only scene. So if they're not doing this, memeing the complaints of fans about the disco filters, this is a pretty weird choice. Very ironic and very funny at the same time. And I'll say this, it's not really a weird scene, okay? It's funny, but it's not weird. The whole thing with the disco filter, people complain about it because it just doesn't fit. You cannot spam it every time. But this one right here, it kind of works because he is in a disco stage. So I just found the whole thing pretty funny and very ironic, and that's about it. I mean, listen, I have the same complaint. I hate the disco filter all over the episode, and they spammed it in this episode too. But in this scene right here, it's not really that bad. It's funny. Now we go to Atomic Samurai facing up against G5, and this is a mixture between the non-canonical one and the canonical version. And right here it does work. It doesn't really change anything story-wise and narrative-wise. Maybe power scaling, it kind of boosts G5 a little bit for hanging that much against the Atomic Samurai. And then after they do the Atomic Slash thing, where they both slash with their best attacks and Atomic Samurai wins. I think this is the best way to actually mix between the two, the canon and non-canon version, the retcon and pre-retconned one, as it doesn't really affect the story or the narrative at all. The animation and movements are obviously pretty broken, feels like they didn't finish some scenes, it's pretty jarring and stiff. But anyways, this episode finishes with Atomic Samurai finally encountering an executive of the Monster Association named Black S. Very important encounter. However, they after cut to the opening, which is treated as an ending, which is something pretty weird. I'm pretty sure that this oftenly happens with pilot episodes, but not in episode 10 or 11 or 12. I don't understand the rules and regulations with it. I feel like it would have been better if they just played the ending like it happened with episode 5. The opening kinda gives an impression that there's still gonna be more after, but then it just doesn't have any end credit scenes. Not a major complaint, it was just weird. Predictions for next episode, so you can skip here to avoid spoilers. Now, since this episode technically covered pre-retcon chapters from 101 all the way to chapter 105, which is actually something I predicted right here when I made this video, I think the next episode will cover chapter 106, 107, 108, and 109. It will feature the most important fights in the Monster Association raid. And similar to season 1 and 2, the episode before the final always serves as the hype before the actual hype. Season 1, we had the S-Class heroes versus the Dark Matter thieves, and Saitama finally finding Boros. Season 2 had Garu destroying the 8A/B class heroes, fought against Genos, and finally encountered his master. And this season, it's going to contain the beginning of the strongest monsters in the association versus the S-Class heroes. It will feature Atomic Samurai versus Black S, Gums versus Pig God, Puri Puri versus Neon, Darkshine versus Bug God, and Homeless Emperor versus Zombie Man. It's the episode that would remind us that this raid is not an easy task. It would also be the very first time time the entity they call God would ever be mentioned in the anime. So I think the cliffhanger would be showing this entity for the first time, only to cut to Saitama maybe encountering Rover. This would obviously require them to reorder some events, and if they do, it wouldn't really pose any problems. Now, final verdict for this episode. Did I enjoy it? Was it good? Was it bad? I think it was bad. I didn't really enjoy any fight featured in this episode, and I think the manga just does it better. You can't see the strength behind every hit. The animation is pretty stiff most of the times. The ghosting and dimming, which is not really the studio's problem, but most of the times everything is stiff, everything is motionless. It just isn't that good. If you want more content in the future, make sure to stick around with subscribing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. Until next time, please take good care.